Welcome to this week's weekly live warm-up exercise thing where I teach you some new warm-up exercises for you to try for the week, see how you like them, and see how it may improve your clarinet playing. So I think I really have been having a lot of fun doing this series, and I'm liking to think of it as this is sort of your like weekly/daily vitamin that you can take, and it's going to help solidify all the cracks and any little inconsistencies that you might have in your fundamentals, and it's going to make you a much stronger clarinet player in the long term. So thanks so much if you've been watching these, and I hope if you've been implementing the little warm-ups that we've been going over each week and been doing it in your practicing each day, I hope you've been noticing some payoff from that and noticing that it's been improving your playing. So without further ado, let's go over the weekly warm-up exercise for this week that I want you to put into practice. So this one is going to be a technique warm-up exercise, and it's again going to be another simple one. We're going through like lots of simple things now so that you get really comfortable, and again when we're building the foundation, we have to start at the very bottom and make sure we're filling all the cracks as we go up so that we can build a really strong clarinet playing out of this foundation. So this simple exercise for this week is going to be the chromatic scale. And we're just going to do a really straightforward chromatic scale. In the future, we'll probably break it down into smaller chunks and do different kind of exercises with the chromatic scale, because the chromatic scale is so important and so powerful for building these fundamentals, because it gets you playing all of the keys and playing all of the notes on the instrument. So for this week, we're just going to do a super simple, straightforward, like 1 octave or 2 octave, or even maybe full range if you're feeling more advanced, but we're just going to be going straight up and straight down and working on getting a really good sound quality throughout all of that range and a good finger coordination throughout all of that range. So let me go ahead and just demonstrate me and how I would play through like a 2 octave chromatic scale if I was practicing it. So you might be a little surprised at how slow I did that. A lot of people, and including myself in like high school and college, will maybe do something more like this. Oh yeah, I'm so good at the chromatic scale and I'm like nice and warmed up and can play so fast. But that's not really super beneficial to our playing at all. Yeah, maybe eventually we'll want to work up the speed of the chromatic scale so we can play something sort of like that and fast and coordinated. And it's great for being able to do that, but that's not the way to get the most benefit out of it, especially at the beginning. So I think going slower so that you can focus on the sound and get a really good evenness between all of the notes can be really beneficial. I always like to start all of the technique stuff, all the technique warm-ups, so mostly scales or any other scale patterns. I like to start it more close to a long tone, because remember, if we have our sort of path of our 3-step warm-up, we start with the long tone to get the sound going great, and then we use the scales as a bridge to get the sound sounding great when we're moving our fingers through music, and then we have also the articulation to keep the sound sounding great when we're moving our tongues. So in order to do that, I think it's important to start the scales a little bit more like a long tone so that you're able to ensure that you're getting a really good sound, and you can focus on the finger coordination and having the fingers really controlled as you're continuing that great sound. So I want to just go over a couple other things I'm thinking about in regards to the fingers particularly. This is something I've been thinking about a little bit more recently and has been really helpful in my playing. So this is maybe a little bit more of an advanced tip, but even if you start out doing it as a more beginner, it's going to be really powerful. So what I've been thinking about lately is a little bit more finger independence, so that only the finger that has to move is worried about doing any work, and there isn't any extra like squeezing of the fingers that are already down, or any like simple like hint of motion or work from the fingers that don't need to be working. So when I'm doing all of this left or right hand stuff, my left hand is totally relaxed and just totally neutral. It's not squeezing with each finger I move. It's not trying to lift with each finger I move. It's like 100% neutral. There's no motion happening there at all, whether it's increasing pressure or decreasing pressure or anything like that. It's just 100% neutral, while the other fingers and the one finger at a time that has to move is doing the work. So that might be something that's really beneficial to think about on the chromatic scale as you're moving through each of these keys that you have to press. Just thinking about only pressing the key that needs to be pressed and only working that finger that needs to be working in that particular moment. And that's the other reason why I love the chromatic scale and why I wanted to go over that as one of the fundamental warm-up exercises, is that it's so great because you press every single key on the instrument pretty much that you'll be using when you're playing. So it's a great way to really know the instrument and find out all of those notes. Also, if you're more of a beginner and you don't know all of the sharps and flats and all of the different notes that are on the instrument that you have to play and come across, it's another great way to be improving that and learning those notes. So I'm a huge fan of the chromatic scale, and I think that you should practice it every day, especially this week, because it's your mission for your weekly warm-up exercise. Finally, before I'm done here, I want to just go over a couple more idiosyncrasies about the chromatic scale. So the first one is just a few fingerings that I think would be really important for you to know. So the best fingerings are to do the left pinky B or E, if you're starting on the low E, do the left pinky, but you can also hold down the right pinky at the same time so that you're grabbing both of those keys, so that when you go to F or to C if you're in the higher register, all you have to do is lift your pinky, and this is already in place. You don't have to worry about any coordination of like and having any extra notes, because you're already putting those down together. The next thing is the forked B natural fingering. So instead of going B flat to B natural and having to flip these fingers back and forth, you can just press this little banana key here, and that's a much easier fingering. So you're going up and back down, rather than, which is just a little bit harder to coordinate rather than just pressing that one key. Finally, this one is sort of missed more. I'm sure that you knew about those other two if you've been playing for any time at all, but this other one you might be doing wrong actually, and that's the D sharp or E flat, or A sharp or B flat if you're in the higher register, and that has to do with using the left sliver key rather than the right one. This is the traditional fingering uses like D or A with this right side key. That's sort of the standard go-to fingering, but I really like this left fingering to get used to. And the benefit of this one is that it keeps the motion in one hand. So you don't have to coordinate getting this hand in and then out as you go up. It's just all right there on one hand. So for the chromatic scale at the very least, but in all kinds of different musical examples, I think you should get comfortable with using this left D sharp, E flat, A sharp, B flat fingering. And then the last special one that I'm also sure that you've known about is the side F sharp. So as you're going up, instead of having to go F natural with your thumb and then flipping back and forth to F sharp with your first finger, you can keep the F natural with your thumb and then just press those side keys to get the F sharp. I actually only use this fingering on the way up, and then I do practice flipping on the way down. The only reason for this is just because it's sometimes can be better to just be coordinating again just the left hand rather than having to worry about getting these two fingers to go down together on the way down, especially. I also think both of these fingerings come up and can be useful in so many different situations. It's great to be really comfortable with both of them. And then finally, the other thing for the chromatic scale that I wanted to tell you about to give you a little bit of a thought process and a way to practice it is thinking about the way that you're subdividing and grouping the notes as you're playing through it. So earlier in the video when I did the like super fast high school, early college version, it's totally a mess and you can't hear each individual note at all. Sure, I like go through the 2 octaves and come back down, but it's not really a real quality scale because I don't have any clear grouping in my head of what I'm doing with the notes. So it's always important to have an idea of what kind of subdivision and like what actual rhythm you're playing. I call this like fast note freakout, where people are trying to play fast and totally lose the sense of rhythm. No matter what we're playing, how fast or slow, it has to have a clear rhythm and you have to be able to hear each note. So the way to do that in the chromatic scale is make sure that you know what subdivision you're doing. So if you're doing 2 octaves, the best way to subdivide that is into triplets. So triplet, triplet, triplet. And that way you'll end up on the downbeat when you end and on the downbeat at the top. So that would sound like this. If you're doing 1 octave, it's also like that. Doing triplets is the best. And if you're doing full, like a full range where you start on low E and go all the way up to G, then triplets are still the best. And full range all the way up to high C, if you're going like really, really full range for the very advanced players, triplets also work great for that. The one time that actually 16th notes are better than triplets are if you go from low E up to just the clarion C with the thumb and register key. That way it works out best with 16th notes like this. So you can hear how by having those groupings and knowing what subdivision I'm doing, it's so easy to keep track of all the notes. And it also helps me to think about just moving that one finger at a time and keeping the coordination really great, so that eventually I can speed up and sound really clear. So that every single note has its rhythm, has its space, has its own individual finger motion, and everything sounds great and smooth. So I hope you've enjoyed learning about the chromatic scale for this week's live weekly warm-up exercise. I hope you practice this over each day for this week and see how it might help. I think the chromatic scale is probably one of the best sort of scale exercises to be practicing, again, because it just gets you working through all of those keys, and it's great to get that finger coordination and get things feeling really great. We will certainly be doing more technique warm-ups based off of the chromatic scale in the future. So I wanted to make sure that you're familiar with just the normal, like 2 octave, even 1 octave is great. Just going through the chromatic scale and getting familiar with those notes and fingerings. So thanks so much for watching this. Remember, even if you aren't watching this live, you're welcome to ask any questions you have in the comments whenever you may come across this video. And finally, make sure if you aren't a member of the official Quick Start Clarinet community that you go to www.quickstartclarinet.com/join and sign up to be an official member of the community. I have a cool free handout for you there that goes over the 3 steps to mastering the fundamentals, I call it, which is really fantastic. And you will also be a part of the community that receives email, tips, and tricks from me. And it's just super fun. And it's also completely all free to be a part of the community. So if you're interested in improving your clarinet playing, and if you've watched this video so far, you probably are, go over to quickstartclarinet.com/join and join the official community. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week after you've done a week of practicing your chromatic scales, and we'll go over another weekly warm-up exercise live next Monday at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. See you then.